Ready for some new mock drafts. The Jets are moving up in this year's draft, trading their first-round pick, the 6th overall selection, to the Colts for their 3rd overall selection. The Colts will also receive 2 second-round picks from the Jets in this year's draft. That would be the 37th and 49th overall selections, and another second-round pick in 2019. Let's go to the phones, bring in NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport for the latest on this trade. Ian, the Jets, do they like multiple quarterbacks going up to 3?
Well, there's a couple of things we need to know here. First of all, the Jets talked to the Browns at number 1. I believe talked to the Giants at number 2, discussed moving all the way up to the top of the draft, but they do feel comfortable with where they're at, settling in at number 3, giving up 3 second-round picks for the right to do so. It's a hefty load. It's a lot for the New York Jets, but if they do end up with a quarterback that they wanted, or at least one of the quarterbacks that they wanted, then it will be worth it. Clearly, the search for a franchise quarterback is something that teams would be willing to pay whatever for. The fact that the Jets didn't have to give up a first-round pick is something that is worth noting. You also have to think that the Jets like more than one quarterback. You also have to think that the Jets don't believe that everyone in front of them is taking a quarterback, because it's hard for me to imagine the Jets making this move and saying, all right, we're going to trade all these picks for the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. You have to think they think either the Browns or the Giants are not taking a QB.
And then you mentioned that the Jets did make calls trying to figure out what Cleveland was going to do at 1 if they were willing to make that trade. Looking at that, what's the timeline for this? Was this during the Cousins negotiation when they started to feel like it was going to go in favor of Minnesota?
It's unclear at this point when the actual trade picked up traction and when they realized they were going to do it. But, the Jets are pretty realistic. I talked to people around the time of the Combine, and they were in on Kirk Cousins. I believe they finished 2nd to the Minnesota Vikings, but they just knew that it was going to be the Vikings. They did not feel confident they would get Cousins. So when this trade actually picked up traction or not, it's more like the Jets sort of knew they weren't getting him, so they said, all right, we're not going to get Cousins, and we're going to trade all these second-round picks for the best guy we can get in the draft. And we're going to see who they end up with, but obviously it's a pretty big outlay right now for the Jets.
Ian, you mentioned some of the difficulty in finding a quarterback room that would include, at the moment, Josh McCown, Teddy Bridgewater, Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg. What might the future look like for some of those guys with the Jets making this move? Because most people think you don't make this move if it's not a quarterback.
Right. I mean, rarely do we see multiple draft picks going, up into the draft for not a quarterback. That just never happens. So let's assume it is for a quarterback. Then you say, well, they're going to add someone probably in the draft early, I would assume, and maybe try to trade one of these other guys, or maybe release one of these other guys if they're not able to be traded. So I think that's kind of where we are. I would expect the Jets to either shop these quarterbacks now or to wait until the draft, make sure they get their guy, and then do it then. But it's pretty clear not all of these guys are going to be on the roster when the season begins.
And then on the other side of this trade, Ian, the Colts going from 3 to 6 after a quiet period in free agency, looking at the job that Chris Ballard and company have done, could they go back and still take the same guy they were going to take at 3?
Yeah, they could. Or more likely, they just want good players. I mean, where the Colts are, they do not have enough good players. They need better players. So one way to do it is to say, you know what, I'm going to move from 3 to 6. Let someone else take a quarterback who we weren't going to take anyway, and take the best position player, not a quarterback, at 6, and maybe they move back again. I wouldn't be surprised if they move back again. You have a lot of teams that want to come up, a lot of teams that need a quarterback, 4 at least really good quarterbacks here. I think the Colts are just trying to accumulate assets and get really good players.
Buffalo Bills building up momentum as far as draft capital as well in the recent weeks.